Hello, this is the 60th edition of Krakow Film Festival, the online edition, and I think it's safe to say we now have the Israeli edition of the Q&As, because we have two Israeli filmmakers with us. We've just seen two films, Kosher Beach and Anna, and I do think that these are the films that share some similarities. They tell the stories of women who are trying to escape their confinement, and this confinement can be defined in different ways. And in defining this confinement, the directors of these films will help us, because the director of Kosher Beach, Karin Keiner, is with us. Hello.
Yeah, hi.
And the director of Anna, Dekel Berenson, who's also one of the members of the jury of this edition of Krakow Film Festival short film competition. Hello, Dekel.
Yeah, hey.
So let's start with Kosher Beach. And
Okay.
this is a story about the aforementioned, the title Beach in Israel. And this is a small universe, this beach, a small world with its own rules of conduct. So I'm interested, Karin, in how did the process of you getting to know this world look like? Because I can imagine that you had to immerse yourself in this very particular world with particular rules and characters and people in it.
Yeah, of course. Okay, first thing, I want to say that I'm really excited to be here, in spite of the fact that I'm at home. But I'm happy that I'm part of the festival.
We're all at home. You're not alone in this.
Yeah. So, okay. Actually, this is a really strict beach. I think it's the separate beach. A kosher beach is... when I researched about it, so I understand that it's like the only beach in the world that separates men and women on different days. Like the women are coming on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and the men coming on Monday, Thursday, and Friday. In Israel, we have like more 10 beaches like that, but all around the world, you don't have the separation between men and women, and this is the segregation that you're talking about, actually. And we are in these political times that we're talking, and the times that the film came out, in spite of the fact that I started it like 5 years ago, that everybody is talking about segregation, like men and women. In Israel, they're talking about it a lot because you don't allow women to sing in front of men. You separate them in buses. There is a lot of going on about it. So first of all, I start with this question. It wasn't easy. All this beach I was very curious about it because it's one bay that actually is divided in 3 beaches. It's like 500 meters of one beach, but it's divided to 3 beaches. The first one is the LGBT beach, like the gay beach, and in the middle is the dog beach. And the separate beach is like, if you see the bay, it's right across the gay beach. You actually can see both of the beaches because it's a really small bay. And I was fascinated.
Different worlds.
It was amazing, such a different world. Like, yeah, and even when you're coming on the week when there is the parade or all these months, there are a lot of parties and going on there. And it's like so weird, like all this freedom around them. And they are living in this small area that is strict rules, and actually is written in the front, you need to wear modest clothes. And they're living there with the lifeguards, the male lifeguards, like in peaceful. There is a certain harmony there. And I started with this. It's like the Israeli conflict on the beach, that the beach for us means freedom, and you're coming to get some rest. And you're entering a world that it's very close and strict. And actually freedom is the last word that you're thinking about when you're coming to ultra-Orthodox neighborhood or cities like Bnei Brak and the close in Jerusalem, the close neighborhood over there. So it's so weird. And it was really difficult to get in. I waited for 4 months for approval from the authorities and the rabbis. And then I needed approval from the women, because actually ultra-Orthodox women are not allowed to be filmed. So it was really hard. And like step by step, like I knew the Rebbetzin of the beach. There is a Rebbetzin for the women. So this is amazing. And she's actually, they need approval from a rabbi. So, okay, they told me if you want for the women to be filmed, you have to get her approval. So talk to her. So I started this pursuit, like courtesing a character for a movie. And at the beginning, I came to the beach with like shorts. I'm secular with like shorts and shirts, and I didn't mind.
That must have been made quite an impression there.
Yeah. We are in a very, very close relationship with them. It's like I'm really close to them. It was so amazing that they trusted me and opened up with their homes and their hearts and their tough stories. And it was still I'm amazed by it, because they actually, after the movie was released in Israel, they didn't want to be interviewed to anything. Like they came and they seen the movie. I gave them a private screening, and they were so moved, and it was amazing because people came up to them from Bnei Brak and told them, "You're making." I say it in Hebrew. Maybe Dekel knows the meaning. Kiddush Hashem, like you're doing good with God, like what you did, that you filmed from this movie, and because the ultra-Orthodox, in their image in the Israeli, media is not good. So yeah, and they told them that you did good. You did good with the Lord.
You sort of helped with this negative image, and you were talking about Israeli conflict and Dekel. I'm turning to you because your film is taking place in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine, which is of course still embroiled in a conflict, in war, and I do think that for a Western viewer, Ukraine can be an unknown land. For us in Poland, here it's a different story because we are in the same region. We have some historical common experiences with Ukrainians. But what was your approach in terms of depicting Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine? What was your idea of presenting that area and that world to the viewers?
So first of all, I have Ukrainian roots. So my grandmother, so one of my grandmothers was born in what used to be the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but which is today Ukraine.
Yeah.
And it's actually a very funny story. I actually discovered literally just 5 days ago that my great-great-grandmother from the other side of the family was also born in Ukraine.
Oh.
And her husband was born in Moldova, which is like a complete surprise to me, because I thought they came from a completely different area, and I just discovered this information. So I have some connection to the area from my family background, and I traveled in Ukraine, and it was 8-9 years ago already. So I knew about Ukraine, and I lived in Budapest for 5-6 years. So I have a very strong connection to East Europe, actually. When I was young, I used to read I read all of Milan Kundeра's book when I was young, and I was just fascinated by East Europe, and I wanted to live there. And when I was 21, I traveled in Budapest, and I met somebody, and I stayed there for 6 years. So I traveled the whole area in Poland also. So
if you had any bad experiences in Eastern Europe, Milan Kundera was to blame.
No, just except of one time I took a train from Krakow to Gdansk, and me and my girlfriend, then we were guests. You know how in the night train they put gas in your cabin?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? To steal your wallet? Anyway, that was the only bad experience, but everything else was a good experience. So then so I knew about, I'm familiar with the area very much, and And I've been traveling a lot in the last 15 years, and so for me it was very natural to go to Ukraine to make a film there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually, Anna is part of a series of short films that I was working on, that each of them was shot in a different country. So last year, my previous film, Ashmina, was actually screened in the Krakow Film Festival, and it won the Silver Bear, that's why I'm, they invited me to be a jury this year. So I was writing stories from all over the world, mainly stories that I've encountered myself or heard about from first hand, and that's how I got to know about the story which is told in Anna. And yes, it's related also to the fact that Ukraine is in a state of war, and and has been in such an area of conflict for centuries, because it's just in the middle between East and West Europe, and basically like Poland.
A lot of conflicting
interests. A lot of similarities. Similarities. And now it continues and goes on. And actually, where we shot the film is just 60 or 70 kilometers from the front between Ukraine and Russia. And I actually wanted to go to do location scouting in a different city. And one day before, I read in the news that there were shelling there, shootings, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't go there. So
you were a bit like a war correspondent.
Yes, a little bit, and then this also connects to the story of the film itself, because in Ukraine there are many more women than men in Ukraine, because a lot of men, there are accidents, alcoholism, in military wars. So a lot of women have this problem that they can't find a match. And then there is this industry there, not only because of that, but that helps, of American companies bringing to Ukraine busloads of American and foreign men to meet local women who are, looking to get away from the situation, getting away from Ukraine, or finding a partner because they're unable to find a partner in Ukraine. And that's what the film is about.
Mm-hmm. The word freedom appeared in this conversation a few times, and I think it sort of pertains to both of the films, because the characters in both films are, I think, in a way, searching for some kind of freedom. But in Koszerna, it is interesting to me because I see a very curious paradox in your film, Karin, and in this beach, because you said about segregation. And in sort of Western view, in our Western values, segregation is a discrimination. But at the same time, it seems that this beach which is based on segregation, this Koszerna beach in your film, is for a lot of these women, the only space of freedom in which they can escape from their confinement, for a very orthodox patriarchal culture which sort of repressed them. So this is a paradox which is very interesting, and I understand from the film that was one of the main areas of interest for you.
It was one of the main interests for me, and especially I thought about it a little bit because of this. Actually, because of these days, like we're like staying at home, not now, but it's more like light now, but in all this time of Corona, COVID-19, that we've stayed in quarantine, I thought, okay, now you can understand how these women feels. When you say this is segregation, discrimination, you don't allow separate men for women, this is their life every day. And this beach actually is the only place they can breathe and they can run away from their strict life and rules. And the world is filled with rules and how you should dress and how do you act and what do you say. And you have to marry this guy because we chose it for you. And there is a lot of conflict and problems. And even if you have this close, if you have a small house in Bnei Brak with all the neighbors watching you, and you like Dina and her daughters over there, the women, and there is a lot of problems with the husband, and this is the only place she can run because she allowed to be there because this is an only place for women. So I can, I tell all this, all the critics, like I tell them, so this is their only place. So you have like, at least in Tel Aviv, I think we have like 12 beaches. They've got 100 meters to feel free and get fresh air and for 2 hours. So how do you see it? You mean what I'm saying? Like now, we stayed at home for 2 weeks. We couldn't get out. We weren't allowed to see nobody. And now you can actually feel how these women feel.
Yeah. There's also this very interesting issue because there is this woman there who is not Orthodox, but she is on this beach, very thinly dressed, shall we say. And one of the women remarks that she's here because here she won't be harassed by men.
Yeah.
So this is also a very interesting aspect that women who go there, at the same time, this is a segregation and in some form of discrimination. But at the same time, for some women, it can be freedom from, sexual harassment. This is incredible.
And this is exactly the reason a lot of secular girls come over there.
Yeah.
They come actually because this is the only place they can, feel free with their body, and nobody will come up to them and say, hey, how about you?
Yeah.
Something like that. This is one of the reasons. This is amazing. There are a lot of women who comes there to find like peace. Yeah. Not only Orthodox women. Like this is one of many scenes that I saw. But actually, this girl, it was amazing that she took off all of her clothes, like what you say, and one of the characters said she should go out to the other beaches. She shouldn't be here. And it's exactly what you say. The other woman, you see she's like from really Orthodox religious, because you see everybody's like, if they're wearing a wig or not a wig, you can see if there are a lot of currents in the ultra-Orthodox world, and one of them is the Hasidic, and they're even more strict. And she said, no, this is the place she should be because nobody will tell her anything.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And actually, you can see how open they are for others. You all the time say, you don't accept us. But actually, we are not accepting them.
Yeah, that's true. And speaking about freedom again and very repressing circumstances, of course, in your film Dekel, in Anna, we have war, we have conflict, and we have a certain condition of life conditions of the main character, which she's trying to escape maybe. But what's interesting to me in your film, we can feel the war in your film, but in a very indirect way. There is no war like directly in your film. You focus very much on the experience of this character. And I wanted to ask you about your idea behind that. Was that your approach from the beginning, that the war should be sort of more in the context and we should focus on the experience of this character?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the kind of films that I want to make, the kind of films that I like watching, are films that are a lot of the story is told in context and in subtext. So for me, exactly, it was enough that we know that you're in Ukraine and there is a Ukrainian flag in the background, and there is one soldier in the background that just is with, he's in uniform and he's howling at a girl, and that sets the context for the story. And that's enough for me. I don't, I like to make films that are not pushing all this information at you, just letting you realize things yourself and absorb yourself in a subtle way. And then we concentrate on Anna and her life situation in the context of what's happening in her country, without making that the focus of the story.
Yeah, I also what I also found interesting in your film is that we're talking about a middle-aged woman, and many times in films there is this prevailing stereotype, and I think not only in films, in culture, and we don't talk, we don't see, we don't view women at a certain age in the context of love, in the context of relationships, in the sexual context. And of course, this is only a stereotype, which is very harming. And in your film, you're focusing very much on this, maybe this sort of lack of this kind of experience in your character's life, and her need to sort of fulfill this need, this sort of desire.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that I was interested in making this film. And I think that one of the reasons, I think, in the film industry, well, there's a couple of problems and reasons why we see the type of films that we see being made, getting financing, getting made. First of all, is that people usually want to make films about themselves, or stories that are very much related to themselves, right? And actually, in the last few years, people are encouraged to only tell their stories, kind of. If you make a story of somebody else, that's frowned upon in a way. And yeah, there are not a lot of middle-aged women. We didn't, I'm still a relatively young person. I didn't get to that age. And most filmmakers, young filmmakers. So it's just like an inherent situation in just, how films are made and how films are financed, or who are filmmakers, that we just don't see that, right? And also, of course, there is the issue, again, of an industry that, people need to make films that other people will want to watch. And a lot of times people will, you will write a film about 90 years old, and you will give it to some, producer or some funding body, and they will tell you, okay, that's great, but who wants to watch this, So there are problems around that, and that's one of the reasons that we don't see a lot of such films made. And of course, that's why it was important for me and interesting for me to make such a film.
Yeah. Karin, now I just to wrap up, one question for each of you. I have on the surface simple, but not really so simple question for you. Would you say that your characters in Koszerna are unhappy, or is it more complicated than that?
I think it's more complicated, because it's amazing, because I took to the movie a variety of characters. There is the ones that are very happy in their status. They're still rebels in their own strict worlds, then going against the rabbis that is saying the beach is not kosher, actually. And there are the ones are not happy. And actually, I think happiness or satisfaction is not coming from the world of segregation. They're coming from inside, from their homes. I filmed in their homes, but actually I chose only to show the beach. And I think all the problems are coming from inside. If you have problems at home, and if your father abuses you or stuff like that, it's getting you to another way. And if you had, even if you're a widow now and you had a really happy relationship with your husband, you understand you don't want anything from that, and you want only to be with your kids. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And I think some of them are happy because in their home they're happy. So actually it's come from this. I don't think it's come from the strict world.
Yeah. Dekel, your film, of course, is Karin's film is documentary. Your film is a short feature film, and what I found in your film is that it's very carefully designed, also in a visual way. So for the last question for you, I'm really interested in how you developed this film visually in terms of mise en scène, in terms of placement of the camera, and so on. This sort of whole aesthetic idea behind this film, because I found it very precise and very thoughtful.
It's just a way. I didn't go to film school, and I'm kind of like made my and I'm like I kind of like taught myself everything from scratch, and it's making a film, even a short film, is like a 6-month adventure. If you work on it full time, it's 6 months, so so to me it's kind of like obvious that everything should be very carefully planned and very precisely made. Of course there is then a risk that something would look like too precise or too pristine and whatever, so you have to keep that in mind.
Okay, so I'm sorry, because I wanted just to clarify, you mean that it can be felt like it's too artificial?
Well, if you overdo it, so
if you overdo it, that's what I mean.
Plan, you have to over plan, but then to know also to be careful not to show it that it doesn't come through, that it's too over planned or too precise or anything. So it's just a side note. But it's everything. I've lived in Ukraine for 4 months to make this film, and everything was very precisely made. And and while I was working on the film with my DP, Vova, so he told me something. He said that it's very difficult to make a feature film perfect because there's just so many things going on in a feature. It's like, it's long, it's at least 90 minutes, and it's huge and so much things and budget and money and production. But a short film, you can make perfect if you really work hard. It's just 12, 15 minutes. It's usually not a huge production. So that was like, really trying to make something precise on every shot, to think about every shot and every scene and every line, and a lot of preparation and a lot of rehearsals. When I was doing the rehearsals, when you watch the film and it's just like not a lot of dialogue, you think, how much rehearsals can you make? But I was working with the actors a lot, and I even replaced actors in the middle of the process. And in Ukraine, my producer told me, she said, like, nobody does rehearsals for short films. And I was like, what? Why? It's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So yes, just a lot of preparation. Because how many short films you can make before you don't break through and make it before you give up, right? So if you're doing something, it's very important to come very, very prepared and to know what you're doing, because then it will show out. And then also, if you're very prepared, if something goes wrong on set, so well what's going on that you feel free to improvise. You feel free to fix things.
I really want to see the movie.
Well,
I will send you a link. You can join, and you can go. You have accreditation to the Krakow.
I'm with discussion online with them how it's going to work, because I'm trying.
But this is a perfect end for the conversation. We should all watch the films. And thank you.
I have to watch all of them. So
of course. Thank you very much, Dekel, Berenson, the director of Anna, Karin Keiner, the director of Koszerna. These were our guests. Thank you very much. This is the 60th edition. This is the 60th edition of Krakow Film Festival. Stay with us for the whole festival. My name is Błażej Hrapkowicz. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Can you send us the link afterwards?
Yeah.
Great. So it was nice talking with you. Anything else? Today is the first day that they opened the coffee shops in Cyprus.
Great.
Today.
What you're doing in Cyprus?
I just want to say bye because I'm heading out. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
I'll contact you on email, Dekel. Thank you.
Okay.
אני יכולה לדבר איתך בעברית בעצם.
ביי ביי.
ביי.